the human among stars. The galaxy was full of voices, and yet one voice was remembered more than others. It was the voice of a human named Elias. He was not born among the stars, but destiny had carried him far away from Earth. He became a soldier, a leader, and finally a savior when war came to the Orion frontier. Elias had saved thousands. He fought not with hatred, but with courage that inspired even those who were not human. He was different from the other commanders. When he spoke, people listened. When he stood, people followed. And when he fought, even enemies admitted that he carried something rare. Now he had been invited to the Grand Council on Elith Prime. It was a world of crystal towers and endless skies, where alien leaders from across the galaxy gathered to decide the future of peace. Elias was only one human among hundreds of species, but the eyes of many turned to him. Some looked at him with suspicion, some with jealousy, and some with silent respect. But among the crowd were two figures whose gazes lingered longer than the rest. Zyra of the Krylons was a warrior queen. Her people lived for battle. Her armor shone like steel fire, and her voice carried the command of armies. She had seen Elias fight on the battlefield, and something inside her heart had shifted. She admired his strength, but she also admired the way he carried mercy even for enemies. Saran of the Alithians was a healer priestess. Her people valued knowledge, balance, and healing above all. She had walked among the wounded when Elias risked his life to save them. She saw not only a soldier, but a man who placed others before himself. In her eyes, he was a light that could guide even the darkest paths. The two women never spoke of their feelings. Not yet, but the galaxy noticed the way they watched him, and whispers began to grow. He is only human, some said with laughter, but a human who changes destinies. Others answered in quiet tones. Elias himself did not know the weight of these whispers. He only wished to protect peace. He walked the shining halls of the council with calm eyes, unaware that love and war were about to follow him. The meeting began, and leaders from across the stars spoke. They argued about borders, about trade, about old rivalries that had never healed. But when Elias stood to speak, the noise faded. His words were simple, his voice steady. Peace is not weakness, he said. It is the choice to stand stronger than fear. The council fell silent. Some felt pride, others felt anger, but all of them listened. Zyra's heart stirred. She had fought countless wars, but never had she heard such words from a warrior. Saran's heart trembled. She had prayed for hope, and now hope stood in front of her in human form. When the council ended, Elias walked alone into the gardens of Elith Prime. The sky above was filled with 2 moons and rivers of stars. He wanted silence, away from politics, away from endless debate, but silence was not what waited for him. Zyra found him first. She approached like a storm, her armor catching the silver light. "Human," she said with a sharp tone. "You speak of peace, but you fight like one born for war. Tell me, do you believe peace can last in a galaxy that only respects strength?" Elias looked at her. His eyes did not flinch. Peace will last only if someone is willing to fight for it, not with conquest, but with courage. Zyra's lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. She had found warriors before, but never one who carried both fire and calm within the same soul. Saran arrived soon after. Her steps were quiet, her robes flowing like water. "Commander Elias," she spoke softly, "you carry words of strength, but also of mercy. Do you not feel the burden of every life you hold?" Elias lowered his eyes. For a moment, the mask of the soldier slipped. "Every life I save, I carry in my heart. Every life I lose, I carry in my soul. That is the truth of command." Saran's breath caught, for in his words, she heard the weight of sacrifice. She knew then that he was not a man of pride, but a man of pain and responsibility. The 3 of them stood beneath the stars, silent for a moment. Each one carried thoughts they did not speak. For Zyra, it was the thrill of finding an equal. For Saran, it was the ache of finding a kindred soul. For Elias, it was the confusion of standing between 2 paths he could not yet see. And in the shadows of the galaxy, unseen eyes watched. The whispers of the council spread like fire, and faraway rulers began to plan. "They love a human," one voice said in the dark. "Then let us make them fight for him," another answered. The first move of destiny had been made, and the game for the heart of a human had begun. Whispers of love. The days after the council were filled with tension. The speeches of Elias spread across the galaxy like sparks carried by the wind. Some called him a symbol of peace, others called him a dangerous dreamer. But to Zyra and Saran, he was something far more personal. Zyra could not forget the way Elias had looked into her eyes, strong but calm. He was unlike any warrior she had ever faced. He did not crave glory. He did not seek domination. He carried honor in a way that made even her proud, Krylon spirit pause. She told herself it was respect, but in the quiet of her chambers, she knew it was more. Saran, meanwhile, found her thoughts returning again and again to his words, his pain, his burden, his endless compassion. She had healed thousands in her life, but she had never seen someone who carried wounds deeper than flesh. Elias carried wounds of the soul, and she wished to heal them. She told herself it was duty, but in her prayer she whispered his name. The whispers of the galaxy began to grow, in the shining markets, in the dark halls of power, in the fleets that crossed the void. Voices spoke of a human who had captured the hearts of two leaders. Some laughed at the foolishness of it, but others saw an opportunity. If Zyra takes the human as her consort, the Krylon fleets will rise above all, one admiral said. If Saran binds him to Elith Prime, their priesthood will claim the galaxy's loyalty, another whispered. The galaxy had turned love into politics, and politics into war. Elias himself remained unaware. He walked among the people of Elith Prime, speaking with traders, workers, even children who looked at him with wide eyes. He did not carry himself like a conqueror, but like a man who simply wished to understand. This humility made the whispers louder. One evening, as the suns of Elith Prime set and the skies burned in silver and red, Elias found himself at the great temple gardens. Saran stood waiting for him, her hands folded, her eyes glowing softly in the fading light. "You should not walk alone, Commander," she said gently. "There are many who would see your light extinguished before it can shine brighter." Elias smiled faintly. "If fear rules me, then peace will never come." Saran stepped closer, her voice trembling though she tried to hide it. "And yet, even the strongest flame must be protected. You carry a burden, Elias, but you do not have to carry it alone." For a moment, the human did not answer. His eyes turned toward the stars, as if searching for something far away. "Alone is the way I've always walked. Alone I buried my comrades. Alone I stood when the battles ended. Perhaps this is the path of humans in the stars." Saran's hand almost lifted to touch his arm, but she stopped herself. Her heart pounded, for she knew that what she felt was no longer admiration. It was something deeper, something that frightened her as much as it warmed her. But before she could speak again, Zyra appeared. She entered the gardens like a storm of steel and fire. Her presence was bold, her armor glinting even in the soft light. She looked at Saran with the sharpness of a blade, then turned her gaze to Elias. "Human," she said with a voice that carried challenge, "you speak of peace, and yet you walk with healers and dreamers. Tell me, will you also walk with warriors? Or do you fear those who shed blood to protect worlds?" Elias did not flinch. He looked at her the way he had looked at Saran, steady, calm, unshaken. "I do not fear warriors, Queen Zyra. I fear only those who fight without cause." For the first time in many years, Zyra's lips curved into a true smile, not of conquest, but of respect. She stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. "Then perhaps you will not fear me." The air between them grew heavy. Saran felt her chest tighten. Zyra's gaze was not just the gaze of a rival. It was the gaze of a woman who had found someone worth fighting for. Elias, caught between the fire of Zyra and the quiet strength of Saran, did not understand the depth of what was happening. He thought only of peace, only of duty, but the galaxy was already twisting their hearts into weapons. In the council chambers, spies carried messages. In the shadows, leaders planned. Across the stars, fleets prepared. The whispers had grown into shouts. "They love a human. the galaxy said. Then let them fight for him, the galaxy demanded. And as night fell over Elith Prime, Elias stood between two women whose hearts burned with a love they could not confess, while far away, the first sparks of war ignited in the dark corners of space. The game of love and power had truly begun. The galaxy decides. The whispers did not stay whispers for long. They spread from the crystal towers of Elith Prime to the war fleets of Krylon space. From the temples of the Alithians to the dark trade routes where smugglers carried news faster than any courier. The story of a single human had reached every corner of the galaxy. Elias, the savior of the Orion frontier, the voice of peace at the council, was no longer seen as only a man. To many, he had become a prize. Admirals spoke his name when planning wars. Priests spoke his name when offering prayers. Rivals spoke his name when making threats. And above them all, two leaders, Zyra and Saran, remained at the center of the storm. The galaxy began to ask a single question, a dangerous question. If both Zyra and Saran love him, then who will claim him? Old rivalries were given new life. The Krylons had always been warriors, proud and fierce. To them, the idea of their queen standing beside a human commander was not weakness. It was destiny. If Queen Zyra takes him, the generals whispered, his courage and her strength will forge a rule none can resist. The Alithians saw another vision. To them, Saran was more than a healer. She was the guiding voice of balance. If Saran binds him, the high priest said, then the galaxy will follow their light, and the age of peace will finally come. But to the shadows of the galaxy, Elias was something else. To the Dominion fleets, to the mercenary kings, to the warlords who thrived on chaos, Elias was a threat, a man who could unite enemies, a man who could inspire loyalty beyond bloodlines. If such a man was loved by leaders, then he could change everything, and that they could not allow. Elias himself did not see the storm he had created. He spent his days walking among the people, listening, speaking, helping where he could. He thought himself a soldier in search of peace, but to the galaxy, he had become a symbol too powerful to ignore. One night, in the grand hall of the council, the argument finally burst into open words. Representatives from rival worlds stood and accused each other. The human belongs with the Krylon queen, one shouted. No, the Alithian priestess claims his spirit, another argued. He is only a man, yet you would break the stars for him, a third voice roared. Elias stood in silence, his hands tightening into fists. He had never been spoken of like property, never been discussed as though he were a weapon to be wielded. At that moment, he realized the truth. His presence was no longer only about peace, it had become about power. After the meeting, Zyra found him in the shadows of the council halls. Her voice was sharp, but filled with something more than command. Do not let them speak of you as if you are a prize. You are a warrior, Elias. You choose your own battles. He looked at her with weary eyes. And if my choice is peace? Zyra's gaze softened, just for a heartbeat. Then I will fight for that choice, even if the galaxy calls me a fool. Later, Saran came to him. She moved like light over water. Her words softer but no less certain. The galaxy does not understand you, Elias. They see what they want to see, a tool, a symbol, a throne, but I see a man who carries more burden than any crown could offer. Elias turned to her, his voice low. And yet, Saran, you too are caught in their games. They will not let you walk beside me without a war. Her eyes glistened with unspoken pain. Then let the war come, if it means standing for what is right. Elias walked away that night with a storm in his heart. Two women stood beside him, each offering loyalty, each offering something he did not know how to accept. He wanted peace, but peace was no longer a choice given freely. The galaxy itself was deciding for him. Far away, in the dark reaches of space, fleets began to move. Old enemies sharpened their blades. Spies carried word back to their masters. The human is the key, they whispered. Break him, and the galaxy breaks with him. And so the stage was set. Elias was no longer only a commander, no longer only a savior. He had become the center of struggle greater than himself, a struggle of love, of power, of destiny. The galaxy had made its decision. If two hearts claimed him, then the stars themselves would burn to decide whose claim was true. War of hearts and blades. The galaxy no longer whispered. It roared, from the crimson banners of the Krylon fleets to the silver temples of Eleth Prime. The name of Elias was spoken not as a man, but as a prize of destiny. Armies were stirred, leaders sharpened their words into weapons, and all of it circled around a single human who had never asked for any of it. Elias watched helplessly as tension spread like fire through dry fields. The council that once sought peace now seemed ready for war. Rival worlds sent fleets to protect their interests, and both allies and enemies demanded to know where Elias would stand. But Elias refused to stand with either side. For him, there was no choosing between hearts, because love could not be a battlefield. Yet for Zyra and Saran, love had become exactly that. Zyra's warriors whispered in her halls, "Take the human as your consort. Let the galaxy know your strength cannot be denied." Saran's priests urged her in hushed voices, "Bind the human to Eleth Prime. Let peace shine from your union." Neither woman wanted to claim Elias like a prize, but both felt the pull of destiny, and neither could walk away. The galaxy pushed them forward. The galaxy wanted a fight. Soon, battle lines were drawn not by territory, but by affection. Fleets loyal to Zyra gathered at the borders, their warships like burning stars. Fleets loyal to Saran stood in defense of Eleth Prime, their ships glowing like silver wings. Even neutral powers began to choose sides. Some feared the wrath of the Krylon Queen, others trusted the light of the Elythian priestess. And through it all, Elias became the storm's eye. He tried to speak to both women. He tried to plead for reason. "This is not what I want," he told Zyra. "I will not be a weapon for your empire," he told Saran. "I will not be a symbol for your temples." But neither woman could stop the momentum, for it was not only their love that drove this conflict. It was the weight of entire civilizations. The first battle erupted on the edge of neutral space. Zyra's fleet clashed with Saran's guardians, not by their own will, but because smaller factions sought to provoke them. "Let them fight," the shadow warlords whispered. "Let the human drown in blood." From the bridge of his ship, Elias watched the stars ignite. Fighters screamed across the void. Battleships fired streams of light. Worlds trembled as warriors fought not for land, not for resources, but for the heart of one man. Elias could not stay silent. He ordered his ship forward, cutting between the two sides. His crew protested. "Commander, we will be destroyed," but Elias stood firm. "Then let us be destroyed in the name of peace. I will not watch love become war." The comms filled with voices, Zyra's sharp tone. "Elias, fall back. I will crush them for you," Saran's desperate cry. "Elias, do not risk yourself. Let me end this battle with mercy." But Elias shouted above them all, "Enough. If you love me, if you respect me, then stop fighting for me and fight with me, not against each other." For a moment, the stars fell silent. Weapons stilled. Hearts hesitated. The warriors looked to their leaders, and the leaders looked to the human who had just defied them both. Zyra's pride burned, but she could not deny the fire in his eyes. Saran's sorrow ached, but she could not deny the truth in his voice. Still, the galaxy was not so easily silenced. Shadows laughed from hidden corners. "Let him shout. He cannot silence the hunger of empires." And in secret, enemies planned greater wars. But in that moment, as Elias stood between two fleets ready to tear each other apart, something changed. The galaxy saw not a prize, not a weapon, but a man willing to throw himself in a fire to stop bloodshed. Zyra lowered her blade. Saran lowered her hand. The fleets hesitated. The war did not end, but for one heartbeat, the human's voice was stronger than all the armies of stars. Elias knew then that this was only the beginning. He had stopped one battle, but the galaxy demanded more. The question of love, of loyalty, of destiny had not been answered, and the price of delaying that answer would be higher than any of them imagined. The war of hearts and blades had only just begun. A human's choice. The fleets had pulled back, but silence was not peace. The galaxy still boiled with tension. Every world waited for the same answer. Who would the human choose? Elias felt the weight pressing on him like a mountain. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Some eyes carried hope, others carried greed, and among those gazes were the two that mattered most, Zyra's fire and Saran's light. The warrior queen and the healer priestess stood at opposite ends of the same question. Both loved him, though neither had spoken words aloud. Both wanted him, but neither wanted to claim him like property. Still, the galaxy demanded a choice, and if he refused, war would consume everything. One night, Elias stood alone in his chamber, staring at the stars through the wide glass of his window. His thoughts were heavy. He had never been a man who sought love. He had only sought to protect. Yet now, two powerful hearts beat for him, and their worlds demanded an answer. He remembered Zyra, the way she carried herself like a storm, her strength, her courage, her fierce loyalty. She was a shield and a sword both. And then he remembered Saran, the way her voice softened the air, her kindness, her wisdom, her quiet strength. She was a healer of both body and soul. Two women, two paths, both true, both dangerous. But Elias was not blind. He saw the truth clearer than anyone. If he chose one, the galaxy would not find peace. The galaxy would divide, and blood would flow endlessly. He could not allow that. He would not be the reason the stars drowned in war. The choice he made was not the one the galaxy expected. At the next council, when leaders demanded his answer, when Zyra stood proud and Saran stood calm, Elias rose and spoke, his voice carried like thunder. I choose no throne, no crown, no single hand. I choose the galaxy. I choose peace. The chamber erupted with shouts. Some called him a coward. Others called him wise. Zyra's eyes widened. Saran's lips parted in surprise. Neither had expected him to stand against the very demand of destiny. Elias continued, If you think I am a prize, you are wrong. If you think I am a symbol, you are mistaken. I am a man. I am a soldier. I am a voice for peace. I will not belong to one and bring death to millions. I will belong to all who believe in a future without chains. The words struck like lightning. For some, it was inspiration. For others, it was rebellion. Zyra clenched her fists. For a moment, anger burned in her. But then she saw the fire in his eyes, the courage that refused to bend, and she could not help but feel pride. Saran lowered her gaze. Her heart ached, but she too saw the truth. He was not rejecting her. He was protecting everyone, even her. But the galaxy was not satisfied. Leaders shouted louder. If you do not choose, then the war will choose for you. Elias raised his head. Then let the war come, and I will not fight for one side against the other. I will fight against any who use love as a weapon. I will fight for unity, even if I stand alone. The silence that followed was heavy. The galaxy had demanded a choice of love, but Elias had given them something else, an answer that challenged their hunger for power. That night, in the quiet after the storm, Zyra came to him. She looked at him with fire, but it was no longer only the fire of desire. It was the fire of respect. You defied them all. Human, you defied even me. I should be angry, but I am not. You are stronger than any crown I could place upon your head. Later, Saran came to him. Her eyes were soft, but her voice carried unshaken resolve. You refused to let the galaxy tear itself apart for your sake. For that, Elias, I will walk beside you, not as a claim, but as a companion. I will heal with you, not bind you. For the first time, Elias felt something shift, not peace, not safety, but a fragile balance. Two women who had been set against each other were now beginning to understand the human they loved was not a prize to win, but a leader to follow. Yet beyond the halls of the council, the galaxy's shadows gathered, the Dominion warlords, the mercenary kings, the restless empires. They had watched Elias refuse, and they whispered, He will not choose. Then let us make him choose. We will break his peace with fire. And so, even as Elias made his choice, the war he wished to prevent grew closer. The galaxy was not done testing him. Beyond love into legend. The galaxy thought Elias had ended the question with his choice, but the truth was that his refusal only set fire to greater storms. The powers that thrived on division could not allow his vision to survive. Shadows whispered in secret halls, fleets gathered in hidden space. And soon, the Dominion launched their strike. They came without warning. Their ships poured from the void like black serpents, armed with weapons that burned through shields and tore through fleets. Their goal was not conquest of worlds, but conquest of a man. They sought Elias, for they knew that if he fell, the fragile balance between Zyra and Saran would collapse, and the galaxy would drown in endless war. Elias was ready. He had seen war before, but this time he would not fight as a soldier of one side. He would fight as the voice of unity. He called Zyra and Saran to his side, and for the first time, the warrior queen and the healer priestess stood not as rivals, but as allies. Zyra's voice was sharp as steel. My fleets will strike the Dominion head-on. Let them feel the fury of Krylon blades. Saran's voice was calm as light. And my healers will guard the wounded. My temples will open as sanctuaries. No warrior will fall without aid. Elias looked at them both, his heart heavy yet proud. Then we will stand together, not as lovers bound by chains, not as leaders bound by politics, but as souls who refuse to let darkness win. The battle began, and it was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Krylon warships blazed forward, their cannons firing streams of fire across the stars. Elythian cruisers moved with graceful precision, their shields glowing like wings of light. At the center of it all was Elias, commanding not one fleet but two, united for the first time in history. The Dominion thought to break him, but instead, they revealed his strength. Soldiers who once doubted him now shouted his name. Elias, Elias, echoed across the void. His courage spread like fire through frozen hearts. In the chaos, Zyra fought aboard her flagship, her blade cutting through enemy borders with relentless fury. She remembered Elias's words, and for the first time, she did not fight only for Krylon honor. She fought for something greater, for a future she could barely imagine, a future shaped by a human. On another front, Saran led her healers into battle zones. Her ships turned into floating sanctuaries, pulling the wounded from wreckage, mending bodies and spirits alike. She too remembered Elias's voice, and she realized her prayers had never been answered by the stars. They had been answered by him. When the Dominion brought forth their dreadnought, a ship larger than cities, with weapons capable of burning whole fleets, fear rippled across the Allied lines. But Elias did not falter. He took command of a small strike team, leading them into the heart of the monster. Zyra protested. Human, you risk too much, Saran begged. You will not survive this. But Elias only smiled. If peace is worth anything, it is worth my life. They entered the dreadnought, corridors filled with shadows and steel. Elias fought like a storm, his rifle in one hand, his courage in the other. Beside him, Zyra cut down enemies with her blade. Saran shielded their path with barriers of light. Together, the three became something the galaxy had never seen, a unity of fire, mercy, and humanity. At the core of the dreadnought, Elias placed the charges himself. His voice was steady as he said, "Not for me, not for you, but for all who deserve to live free." Then the ship shook with fire as the core exploded. The Dominion's greatest weapon was reduced to ashes. When the dust settled, the galaxy looked upon Elias not as a prize, not as a pawn, but as something greater. He was legend, the man who had united two great powers, the man who had stood against shadows and refused to fall. Zyra and Saran stood beside him as the cheers of soldiers and civilians echoed across the stars. For the first time, they did not see each other as rivals. They saw each other as sisters in purpose, bound by the same love for the same man, a love that had turned into something larger than possession. Elias did not smile in victory. His eyes were weary, his heart heavy. But he knew something had changed forever. He was no longer only a soldier, no longer only a voice of peace. He had become a legend that the galaxy could not forget. And legends, once born, could never be caged. the human they fought for. The Dominion's dreadnought was gone, its wreckage drifting across the stars like a broken crown. The galaxy had seen Elias stand against the storm, had seen Zyra and Saran fight not as rivals, but as allies. Yet the war was not truly over, and peace was still fragile. For the galaxy remembered, love had started the conflict, but unity had ended the battle. Now every world asked the same question. What comes after? Elias did not return home as a conqueror. He returned as a man, weary and scarred. His name was sung in marketplaces, whispered in temples, and carried across fleets. But to him, glory felt like a chain. He wanted no throne, no empire, only peace. Zyra walked at his side, her armor scratched, her eyes fierce. Yet when she looked at Elias, her gaze softened. She had once thought strength was conquest. Now she understood strength was sacrifice. Elias had taught her that. Saran too stood with him, robes torn, hands marked from healing without rest. Her voice remained calm, her spirit unshaken. She had once thought peace came from prayers. Now she knew peace was made by those who dared to act. Elias had shown her that. The galaxy gathered once more the council, but this time the chamber was different. The arguments were quiet, the pride of rulers weighed down by what they had seen, and when Elias stood, no one dared to interrupt. I was never a prize, he said, his voice steady. I was never a weapon. I am human, and what I carry is not for one, but for all. The galaxy cannot be healed by love that divides. It can only be healed by love that unites. The chamber fell silent. Leaders lowered their heads, some out of shame, some out of respect, and for the first time in many lifetimes, the council agreed, not by force, but by choice. Peace was declared, not perfect, not eternal, but real. Fleets withdrew, temples opened, markets revived, the galaxy began to breathe again. And yet, Elias knew that peace was not a gift. It was a struggle, one he would fight for until his last breath. He was not done, for legends do not rest. Legends endure. That night, beneath the twin moons of Eleth Prime, Elias stood in the gardens where everything had first begun. Zyra and Saran stood with him. They did not argue. They did not fight. Instead, they shared the silence of those who understood each other without words. Zyra placed her hand on her blade, then set it aside. I fought for you, Elias, but I see now, you were never meant to be mine alone. You were meant for the galaxy. Saran folded her hands, her eyes shimmering. I prayed for you, Elias, but I see now, you were never meant to answer only me. You were meant to answer us all. Elias turned to them both, his heart heavy yet alive. You gave me more than I can repay. You taught me strength. You taught me mercy. Without you, I would not have stood. Without you, I would not have endured. The three stood together, not bound by chains of possession, but by something stronger, trust, sacrifice, and a love that had grown beyond desire. The galaxy would tell the story differently. Some would say the warrior queen and the healer priestess fought for him. Some would say they united because of him. Some would say he was chosen by the stars. But the truth was simpler. He was only a man, a human, who refused to let love become a weapon. A human who turned two hearts into one alliance. A human who showed the galaxy that strength was not domination, but compassion. Generations later, children would hear his name in stories. Soldiers would whisper his words before battle. Healers would remember his courage in the darkest hours, and lovers would recall the tale of the human for whom even the stars were willing to fight. Zyra remained a queen, but her empire was no longer built on fear. Saran remained a priestess, but her temples were no longer bound by silence. And Elias remained what he had always been. Not a king, not a saint, but a soldier who chose peace when all others chose war. The galaxy did not forget. The galaxy could not forget, for some legends fade with time, but others become eternal. And so the story of the human they fought for became not the story of a prize, but the story of a man who became hope itself.